welcome back to my channel. Today, October 9th, starts the beginning of Fire Prevention Week, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to share some picture books that you can read aloud with your students about fire safety. But first, if you're new here, my name is Sarah and I'm from The Colorful Apple. Every Sunday night, I share a picture book and novel read-alouds that you can share in your classroom with your students to really build their love of reading. I love sharing books that help connect with your students and connect with things that are going on in their life. So today, let's talk about fire safety books that you can share in your classroom. So Fire Prevention Week started in 1922, so this year it is actually the 100th anniversary. So this is a perfect time to share with your students how to be safe in case there is a fire and how to prevent fires as well. This can be a little nerve-wracking or a little scary for students and build some anxiety. So that's why I think picture books are a great way to help ease those anxieties, to help them to stay calm in case there is an emergency. So let's jump into those books. This first book that I have is probably my favorite from the collection. I have to say there weren't a lot of books that I could find, so I did my best in picking and choosing ones that I think would be best for your students. But I'm gonna give you a few warnings or heads up about a couple of them before you bring them into your classroom. But this first one is called No Dragons for Tea. And in this story, a young girl befriends a dragon and they have a lot of fun together doing all sorts of activities. And then one day at a tea party, the dragon sneezes and causes a fire. Then the book goes through the different things that kids need to do to stay safe in case there is a fire. That they need to get out of the building fast. They need to stay low to the ground to avoid the smoke. They can't go back in to get anything. They need to have a meeting place with their family that they can all be safe away from the fire. And at the end, the dragon's nervous because he's upset that he started the fire, but the firefighters reassure him that what was important was that he followed all the safety protocols, that he did everything he needed to keep himself and the young girl safe. So I like that this one goes through step by step the things that you need to do in case there is a fire. And I like that in this one, it goes through the different steps that people should take in case there is a fire, but in kind of a reassuring way that helps students understand without making them feel nervous about it. And then also in the back of the book, there is some extra information about how students can stay safe or prevent fires. A great fire safety book to read aloud in the classroom. This next book that I have is actually a nonfiction book, and it's a little old, but most of the information is still relevant and will help students understand kind of the back end of what happens when there's a fire, what the firefighters do, and how they can help. So this one's called Fire, and it goes through what firefighters do when there's a fire in different situations. What they do when there's a fire in the city, in the country, in a forest, or on the water. And it goes through what happens when that alarm bell rings, where they go on the fire truck, what equipment they use. And I think this will kind of help students understand that the firefighters are there to help keep them safe and the different jobs that they have when there is a fire. So I think this is kind of a neat one. And like I said, I think it's from 1985, so it's old, but there's still some really good information and I think will help students understand what's going on and make them feel safer. Another book that I have is called Stop, Drop, and Roll, and this book is part of a series in which a young girl named Jessica worries about a lot of things. And in this one, it's Fire Prevention Week in her classroom, so her teacher is teaching the class all the things that they need to do in case there's a fire and how they can stay safe in the school when there is a fire. Well, this makes Jessica really worried, and she goes home and she realizes that her family doesn't have any of these things in place. Their smoke alarms aren't hooked up, they don't have extra batteries, they haven't created a meeting place. So she does all this stuff with her family in order to keep them safe, but the more her teacher talks about what needs to be done and what can happen if there's a fire, the more she worries. And at the end, it's her brother's birthday, and she's so really worked up that when she looks up when his cake is being brought to the table, she's nervous that there's a fire, but really it's just the candles on the cake. This book I'm going to give a warning with. So while it has good information about what students should do, such as making sure their smoke alarms work, making sure their family has a meeting place, if the door feels warm in their house, they shouldn't go through that door. All important information, but the main character in this book, Jessica, she worries so much that I think this could build anxiety with some students, so I would tread carefully with it because you don't want to make students more worried. You want them to be calm in this situation. You want them to know what's going on. So I think if you do read it aloud, make sure that they understand that they don't need to get worried, that it's more important that they just follow the steps that you've gone through that you're teaching them. So again, a fire safety book to share in your class, but just be careful with it and know your students before reading it out loud. This next one is also about a teacher talking with her class about fire safety, and this one is called Miss Mingo and the Fire Drill. And Miss Mingo is a flamingo, and she's the teacher, and all of her students are different types of animals. And she's teaching them about fire safety, what to do when the fire alarm goes off in the school building. And it's also neat because one of my favorite parts of this book is that the fire chief comes in, and he's a grizzly bear, so he's this really big animal, and he's dressed in all of his fire gear, and the students get nervous, but then he takes off his equipment, and they realize that there's nothing to be afraid of, that it's just someone like them, I was gonna say a human being, but an animal like them underneath all of that clothing, and all of that equipment is to keep him safe, which I think is so important. And when I was teaching, we always had a fire prevention assembly in October, and the firefighters would come in and they would do that. They would show us that they were normal people, and then what they looked like with that fire equipment on, because it's scary for anyone to see this person dressed up in all of this firefighter gear with the helmet and the suit and everything. It can be kind of scary. So I like how they go through in this book and show that it's just a normal person, or animal in this case, underneath all that gear, and that they're there to help you, and that you shouldn't be afraid or run away from them. The only thing I didn't like about this book is I was a little distracted as I was reading, because on the first 8 or 10 pages or so, it explains what each of the animals does when they are nervous. And so they're interesting facts, but I felt like it took away from the point of the story about fire safety. So if I was reading it out loud, I would skip the animal facts that are on each page. Students can go back and read that later, but I didn't think that was really important to the theme of the story. But anyway, this book also gives great information about especially what to do in the school building when the fire alarm goes off. And this last book that I have is great for younger students. It's a very brief overview. I wouldn't say it gives a lot of information or facts, and it doesn't really give fire safety tips, but it's a fun one to read to help students understand what firefighters do. And this one is called Firefighter Pete, and it's part of the Pete the Cat series. And in the story, Pete's class goes to visit the fire station, and they learn about what the firefighters do at the fire station. And then when the alarm goes off, Pete goes with them to help fight a fire. So more of a fun, interesting story, just to get students, maybe start with this book, and to get students thinking about what firefighters do and how they can help us, and then maybe go into the other books with your class. But those are all of the fire safety books that I have. Like I said, there's not a lot to choose from, and I really dug hard to find a couple. If I find any more, I'll make sure I share them either on Instagram or on my blog. And I hope that you found this video helpful, and that you'll be able to share some of these fire safety read aloud books with your class, and that you will help students feel more relaxed and less anxious in case there is a fire alarm that goes off, and that students know how to stay safe in a fire and how to prevent fires as well. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next Sunday night for another video all about using read alouds in your classroom. Have a great week.